Minnesota, and certainly on the national level. Would you approach that issue concurrently with the siting of new power plants, or do you have some idea as to how we could solve both the federal permanent storage and the state temporary storage issues?
Thank you. I think that we have to store and we have to reprocess. I think we have to do both. I think one of the worst decisions was made by President Carter back in the 70s when he said we would not reprocess spent nuclear fuel. The French do it. The Europeans do it. Other countries do it. 80% of the French electricity is generated by nuclear power. Now, we always like to imitate the French. And by the way, in case you hadn't noticed, they now have a pro-American president of France, which shows if you live long enough, anything can happen, and he's a great guy. I think we have to do both. I've always favored Yucca Mountain. Now, I understand that the legal challenges have to be addressed. You can't just go in there and not have all of the problems and challenges addressed. But if it's not Yucca Mountain, then it's got to be someplace. But also, there's so much of it laying around now that you're going to have to do both. Reprocessed spent nuclear fuel is something that is done worldwide. And there's an idea that the Russians have had, which also addresses part of the problem with Iran, that we could establish an international site where you could take spent nuclear fuel and reprocess it. This is obviously the major reason for that is to prevent the spread of materials that could be used to make nuclear weapons. So I'm sorry to give you a long answer. We have to reprocess, we have to store, and again, because you're obviously knowledgeable about this, my friends, when we're talking about threats to our security, if you have spent nuclear fuel sitting around nuclear power plants all over America, you've got a great danger there. It's a national security issue. But people, and so we can't be satisfied with the status quo. Did you want to add to that? Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'd just like to say welcome to the state of Minnesota, Senator, and we're really glad to have you here. And as the state of Minnesota, we're of course known as the land of 10,000 lakes. We're starting to become, I think, known as the land of 10,000 energy resources, and Governor Pawlenty has been working a lot on different energy resources. I'd like to know what you would set as President of the United States a direction for new alternative energy sources so we could, again, move away from our foreign oil commitments and problems. And really, I think that situation is going to take great leadership to get it done. And we're looking to you for that leadership.
Thank you. Wind, tide, solar, nuclear, a battery that we should be investing in and Detroit tells us that they're close to, that will take a car 100 or 200 miles before it has to be plugged in, and then that recharging is relatively brief. I won't ask for a show of hands, but I'll bet you that if somebody said we would provide you with an affordable automobile that would take you over 100 miles before you have to plug it in again, and by the way, the price has got to come down, as we know, then I think literally every American would embrace it. It's not an accident. And the auto manufacturers are starting to react. I'm sure you may have seen where General Motors said they were going to stop manufacturing SUVs and they're going to start manufacturing the Volt, which is the technology isn't quite there yet, but I have confidence in it. So I think it's got to be a combination of all of those things. Let 1,000 flowers bloom, and where pure research and development is required by the federal government, that's a proper role. The internet came into being because of federal funding. There are many other things that have come into being. Once we complete the government research and development funding, then let the free enterprise system run with it. But we're going to have to invest more. We are spending on research and development about $4 billion a year. That is less than 3 days of our tab for imported oil. So we need to make those investments. And again, I just want to point out, we are the most innovative entrepreneurial nation in the world, despite the problems that we are in today. And the President of the United States speaks directly to the American people and said, my friends, We're going to become energy independent and lay out all the reasons for it, and we're going to conserve also. I think the American people will not only react positively, they will react with enthusiasm. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Oh, let me go here and then I'll go right to you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Glad to meet you. Our state, I'm sure Governor Pawlenty knows that a lot of the industries in our state depend on the immigrants' labor, both legal and illegal. And on the flip side of that, in recent past, we've had some very tragic auto accidents, for one thing, created by some of these immigrants, and partially because they don't know our laws, they don't read our language. Can you expound a little bit more on your immigration policies?
Thank you. I am convinced that we need a temporary worker program that works. And what I mean by that is that we have the technology to develop a tamper-proof biometric document that is connected to an electronic employment verification system, that if someone has a job opening, then they can enter into a contract, and there'll be plenty of people to facilitate this, with another country, and they can get a contract from that employer. They can come to this country for 2 years and work, and thereby have that verifiable. Today, the business owner is the INS agent, and the business owner can't determine by the birth certificate or the Social Security card whether that person is here legitimately or not. But under this system, the employer has the obligation to use that system. So we would have to prosecute those who continue to go around it and hire people illegally. We must secure our borders. We must secure our borders, and that is a federal responsibility. And that's a federal responsibility. And we have to, and Americans want that done first. And I understand that, because back in 1986 we passed a law and we said we'd give amnesty to a couple of million people and we'd secure the borders. We gave the amnesty. We didn't secure the borders, and we all know what has happened. So, but I also want to end up by saying, and I know that you know this, but I'd like to remind you that these also, people who are here illegally, are also God's children. And we have to address this issue in a humane and compassionate fashion. And I would say again, it has to be based on the principle that someone who came here illegally could have no priority whatsoever over those who have come here legally or waited legally to come here. But at the same time, again, there is terrible abuses out there, because the people who are here illegally obviously have no protection of our laws.